The cavern kingdoms began where daylight failed, in a labyrinth of basalt lungs that breathed ink instead of air. Here, on ledges laced with fungus lanterns, entire nations hammered out empires of ore and crystal, exchanging songs instead of currency, because echoes traveled farther than any coin. Every child learned early the two abiding rules of their underworld. First, never trust a silence. It was likely waiting to swallow you. Second, if you should hear a rustle like parchment beneath a heartbeat, bow your head, for the moth priests were passing. The moth priests were older than stalactites. Nobody knew whether the luminous powder that drifted from their wings was dust or doctrine. Either way, it stained whatever it touched with pale radiance, as though memory itself had begun to glow. They guarded the library of echoes, which floated in a hollow geode the size of a cathedral. Its shelves rose like organ pipes, each rhymed by the silver residue of voices once spoken there. When a petitioner's echo finished resounding, it turned solid, curling into a scroll that could be read only by those who had sacrificed something essential and uniquely theirs and impossible to reclaim. Prices varied. A widowed queen surrendered her wedding tears to learn whether her dynasty would endure frostfall. A bandit laid down his true name, emerging from the library forgotten even by his mother. Bargains were irreversible, and the moth priests, for all their shimmer, showed no mercy to those who regretted. Yet still the carved ramps coursed nightly with pilgrims, because knowledge in the darkness was dearer than rubies pulled from the deepest veins. Among the multitudes who feared and worshipped the library, one man had cause to loathe it. Varric of the Hammersong vein, a miner turned exile. Varric carried the mountains in his bones, broad shoulders, hands eclipsed by callus, beard powdered with perpetual dust. Once he had led a crew to pry a seam of violet ore from an unclimbed shaft. One misstrike, one unlucky tremor, and the ceiling folded like wet parchment. None but Varric crawled free. When he stumbled back to the kingdom with mats of grey hair stuck to his cheeks and blood drumming loud as anvils, citizens refused his pleas for forgiveness. Had claimed the Hammersong vein would wail each dusk with the ghosts he buried. To silence the cries, they pushed Varric beyond the city's obsidian gates and marked him shadow-cursed, the title reserved for those who carried disaster in their footprints. He wandered the peripheral tunnels, feeding on blind cave crayfish and the brittle thoughts that accompany guilt. Occasionally he caught rumors adrift on traveler song. Somewhere deep, deeper than the sulphur pools, rested a prophecy sealed against obsidian locks. It spoke of a shadow-cursed bearer whose choice could collapse or elevate every cavern kingdom. The words felt as if they had been carved inside Varric's ribs, and so, after a year of orphaned solitude, he turned his cracked boots toward the Library of Echoes, hoping doom might be negotiated into salvation if he learned the script of it first. The pilgrim path snaked through the veinless quarter, where dripping aragonite formed pillars like frozen lightning. Bioluminescent river shrimp illuminated the route with flickers of azure. Varric marched past cinder bats and through curtains of root hair that descended from mossy ceiling gardens no one had ever found the tops of. Despite the grandeur, the tunnels felt narrower than rumour. Perhaps shame makes all passages crawl space thin, he thought, because any direction might deliver you back to the moment you failed. He did not travel alone for long. At a fork, occupied by a fossilized ribcage, some colossal subterranean beast whose name had vanished, Varric encountered a caravan of stonemasons. They walked with slabs of uncarved jade strapped to their backs, chanting in counter-rhythm so the vibrations would keep stalactites from loosening above. Their leader, a woman whose lips were tattooed shut to preserve sacred silence, traced a sigil of safe passage in the air for Varric. Even the tattooed understood that to deny a shadow-cursed man mercy might invite the same curse upon oneself. He nodded, grateful, yet noted how quickly they accelerated once he was behind them, as though guilt were contagious. Farther on, The ambient glow dimmed, replaced by pulses of green similar to heartbeats. Varric recognized them. Wraithials surfing currents of invisible humidity. Only those who shone with inner fear attracted the creatures. He focused on his breath, imagining each exhale a hammer strike. The eels drifted past, disappointed by his feigned calm. Varric had learned to wear emptiness as armor. Though it cost him dreams, it shielded him from predators that sniffed hope or dread. 3 days later, he reached the geode threshold. From a distance, it resembled a sap-green moon, cracked open to bleed diamonds. As Varric drew near, he saw entrance arches carved from vertebrae of extinct serpents. Between the bones fluttered thousands of moths, whose wings lit the world the precise shade of memory when you closed your eyes against tears. Their priests waited beneath the largest arch, antennas twitching as if tuned to the frequency of his sin. Varric's pulse scattered. The moth priests looked vaguely human-elongated limbs, soft faces, but their pupils were vertical blades, and when they exhaled, script in white fire scrolled across the humid air before evaporating. The foremost priest unfurled wings wider than a market awning and addressed him in a voice like pages turning. "You carry an echo, heavy with stone and bone. Why do you seek the library, breaker of the hammer-song vein?" "To read a prophecy," Varric answered, surprised. His voice still worked. "I need to know whether my hands can mend what they shattered." "All prophecy is double-tongued," murmured another priest. "One edge to wound, another to heal. You would risk either?" "I have already been wounded," Varric said. "If a heavier cut is waiting, best it find me upright." The priests formed a circle, wings overlapping until they resembled a single breathing chrysalis. Their lights converged upon Varric like slow snowfall, examining the seams of his spirit. A final voice, so old the echo crumbled, asked, "What will you trade?" He emptied his pockets. 2 pickheads dulled by travel, a moth-eaten canteen and a shard of violet ore he had kept as penance. The priests barely glanced. Material tokens were trifles here. After a silence deeper than rockfall, the lead priest pronounced sentence. "Your shadow," Varric flinched. A shadow in the caverns was not mere absence of light. It was memory of origins, the proof that one's body still withheld a silhouette of sunlight. Miners believed losing it meant the mountain would no longer remember them, and without that acknowledgement, even bones might dissolve. Yet the priests watched without pity. Bargains required weight to balance knowledge, and Varric's sins had made him dense. He steadied himself. "Take it." The moth priests deployed a spindle fashioned from fused moon milk crystals. They unhooked the shadow at his heels as easily as lifting a length of velvet. Varric experienced the process as a tug from every regret. The moment he misjudged the strut, the muffled screams of crewmen, the hush that followed, and then a lightness so profound he feared floating away. His confiscated silhouette writhed once, shrank into a scroll, and sealed itself with bioluminescent wax. The priests fluttered back, satisfied. "Walk," they said, and the library's ribbed doors sighed open. Inside, resonance replaced architecture. Sound became pillars. Whispers formed balconies. Each breath Varric took braided itself into carpets of half-heard lullaby. He stepped carefully, afraid noise might fracture beneath him. The corridors bent according to what he remembered and what he tried to forget, funneling him into a domed chamber filled by a single lectern of opalized limestone. Upon the lectern lay a flute carved from his own shadow. It hummed at the edge of hearing. A note escaped, multiplied and rebounded. The chamber thickened with looping echoes that soon cohered into words, voices of his dead crew. "Varric, Brother Pickswinger, attend!" His heart hammered. They did not accuse, they guided, layering syllables so each echo became a step of a spiral staircase. At the top, a prophecy condensed. "When the shadow-cursed bears guilt heavier than ore, and mothlight drinks the silhouette of his yesterdays, let him choose. Strike beneath the heart core, and rivers of fire will flood the kingdoms. Their thrones melt into slag, and the world forgets their names. Or cleave a skylight through the ceiling of night. Let starlight fall like rain on stone, and the kingdoms will rise together into days they have never seen, the final echo whispered. But he may not walk both ways, and to choose is to vanish. Varric staggered. Fire or starlight. Collapse or elevation. Each required a single decisive act. The first, an expert blow to a magma-locked stratum known to miners as the heart core. The second, tunneling upward to pierce the legendary crust, letting rumor of surface night pour downward. Both tasks possible, both enormous. Which was right? A moth priced smaller than the rest glided into the chamber. The light she shed revealed that Varric's boots left no eclipse on the floor. He wondered if that meant loss of solid consequence. She addressed his blank outline. You have heard. Remember, Shadowless One, without a shadow, you cannot lie. Whatever tongue shapes your decision will be truth to those who hear. He followed her out. With each step, the library released echoes of his presence that tried to cling to him like beggars, but he had nothing left to give them. When he emerged on the geode ledge, the priests returned his pick heads and canteen, but not his shadow. They nodded a benediction, neither hopeful nor grim. Perhaps guardianship required refusing emotion. The trek back felt shorter. Maybe the tunnels recognized prophecy and bent obediently toward destiny. Along the route, Varric's shadowlessness drew unsettled gazes. Children whispered that he looked like a hole cut from reality. Adults steered wide, uncertain whether curses traveled sideways. He reached Hammersong's obsidian gates at dawn bell, when lichen lamps shifted from blue to rose. The Council of Hammersong convened in a gallery of resonant bronze, so every debated word shook dust from the rafters. Varric's reappearance caused a silence that a month earlier might have swallowed him whole, but now, without a shadow, his posture gave the impression of absolute conviction. He recited the prophecy, voice stripped of all but truth. The councillors fractured at once. Some hailed the chance to bring daylight underground, dreaming of crops that might grow in star rain. Others, older and more scarred, argued that the heart-core flood would banish rival kingdoms, ensuring Hammersong's dominion over whatever survived. The debate raged. Sparks of spit and scripture flicked off marble plinths. Varric watched, sickened. He realized prophecy was a mirror. It exposed what power desired. Until this moment, he had hoped the choice would be collective, that people would listen to conscience. Now he saw they preferred debate to destiny, using words as pickaxes to mine advantage. The noise grew unbearable, reminding him of shrieks beneath the cave-in, until suddenly he lifted a hand. Silence snapped close. He did not command it, rather absence rushed to occupy where his shadow used to be. Into that hush, Varric spoke what he had not dared think. Neither path belongs to councils or kings. The prophecy names me, and I will choose. No one tried to stop him. Perhaps they assumed a lone miner lacked means to shatter worlds. They had forgotten the strength of someone who's already crawled from his own grave. Varric strode from the gallery to the old bellows lift, descending toward magma levels, where only smelters dared linger. There he retrieved a titan pick, forged for splitting adamant iron, a relic he had once worshipped as an apprentice. As he worked for the lift, he worked the shaft as his storage pot. He slung it across his back and boarded a maintenance rail heading toward the kingdom's highest tunnel, the Sky Temple shaft, abandoned centuries after a failed breach quest. All around the mountain's belly murmured, "Choose." Varric could feel both fates pulsing, the incandescent arteries of the heart core and the far cold lattice above, where stone thinned into unconquered roof. Either way, the blow must be perfect. He paused at a switch station built beside a cavern chasm known as the Auditor's Well, so designated because any sound uttered there repeated until judged worthy. Varric swung the titan pick once to test weight. Its ring cascaded into the well, returning as a harmony of thousands. The echoes sounded like his dead crew, again guiding. And then an understanding settled on him. The prophecy's threat and promise were tools, not endpoints. Lapse and elevation could coexist. If he struck a midpoint neither heartcore nor roof, he might carve a conduit, a wound that bled fire upward and starlight down, forging a marriage of opposite destinies. The kingdoms could rise on pillars of cooled magma, while unburdening deep pressure, avoiding both flood and stagnation. But such nuance lived outside prophecy. Once he chose, his body would disappear. Only an echo could finish the work. Varric hefted the pick. For a moment he mourned his shadow, the last witness to the sun he had never seen. Then he inhaled, felt lungs grow weightless, and swung. The Titan pick pierced the auditor's well precisely where roof juxtaposed with an ancient lava chute. Stone screamed. A fissure leapt upward, lightning bright. Simultaneously, a fault line yawned downward, swallowing sparks. The mountain became a throat-singing two notes, fire and void. Varric's arms dissolved into haloed dust as prophecy claimed its tariff. Before consciousness fled, he felt triumphant, not because he had chosen both paths, but because he had chosen a third the prophecy never anticipated, proof that destiny could be negotiated by those willing to pay the full toll. When the tremor subsided, a pillar of obsidian glass had risen within the well, translucent around a core of slow-flowing ember above. The ceiling cracked wide enough for a shaft of alien light, moonlight sifting through for the first time in ages. It mingled with glow from the molten column, painting caverns in colors unimagined. Historians would later say that day divided eras, before convergence and after. Rivers of cooled basalt formed new highways, crops sprouted beneath silver fire, nourished by warmth from below and radiance from above. The kingdoms negotiated a unity charter they called the Accord of the Two Lights, swearing never again to let greed dam the flow between realms. And Varric? Witnesses claimed that during the earthquake a figure of dust rose on non-existent feet, trailing moth powder, then blew apart like spores. Some swore they saw a dark shape, perhaps a shadow long withheld, flutter upward, growing wings of ink edged by luminous script. He joined a swarm of moth priests who had come, uncharacteristically, to watch mortal choice rip the seams of prophecy. Back in the Library of Echoes, a new scroll vibrated among the shelves. It bore no words, only a silhouette stamped in ash. Yet when novices held it to their ears, they heard two simultaneous hymns, one of magma roaring freedom, the other of starlight falling soft as forgiveness. The moth priests placed the scroll at the highest niche, where contradictory truths could glow side by side, illuminating the simple, dangerous possibility that even when futures are scripted, someone brave may still improvise between the lines. So the subterranean myth concludes, not with a kingdom's collapse or elevation alone, but with both interwoven, sustained by the echo of a miner who paid the price of absence to gift his world a double dawn.